Welcome to this month's drawing tutorial. This month we're going to take a look at drawing a portrait in 5 easy steps using this portrait as our reference material. So let's get started right away. Step 1 is to sketch the shape of the head. Don't want to be too fussy about it. It's a rough oval and voila. Then on that shape, if you want to make some broad indications for where the shoulders and neck lie, that's fine, but don't be too fussy. Then on that shape, I'm going to place a guideline. She's looking straight forward with her head not tilted either to the side or forward or back, and so it's easy to place those guidelines. The eyes are right in the middle and in the middle horizontally as well. Let's place the features on this face. I'm going to guess at the width of the first eye. Then I'm going to use a piece of scratch paper, mark that width down, move it over and over again, and mark down the second eye from there, because the eyes are about one eye's width apart from each other. And I can sketch the boxes where the eyes should go just like so. They're going to be rough rectangles, and depending on how wide the person's eyes are, those rectangles might be skinnier or larger. Use that scratch paper again. From the bottom of the eye, one eye width down will give you the approximate bottom of the nostrils. And then another eye's width down, and you have the bottom of the mouth. The nose lines up with the corners of the eyes, and the center of the eyes line up with the corner of the mouth. So I'll just make some dotted lines down like this. Then you can either give yourself some boxes to draw those features in or not. That is up to you. And then just roughly sketch those shapes out. There's my mouth. This is the bottom of the mouth. Then the shape of the eye, I can just fill in within that box. There's one and there's the other. There's an eyebrow, and then about here above the eyebrow I see my first beginnings of the hairline. This is all very loose. Now as far as where the top of the head should go, because this is the top of the face, not necessarily the top of the head. And the rule of thumb is that the width is the same as the distance from the middle of the lips to the top of the hairline. So if she didn't have bangs, it would go on about there. So I can sketch that off really quickly. If this is the width of the head, and this is the middle of the lips, top of the hairline is here. So my square would go about here and here. Then the diagonals that cross at the center of the head. Now this is a quarter of the square. The bottom of the chin should extend down another half of a quarter, or an eighth. If I extend upwards another quarter, that should give me the approximate top of the hair. Bump, and that would be about right here. So now I refer to my photo, and I see if those measurements look approximately right when I sketch some hair on my little girl. And though it's hard to say at this juncture, I'm thinking that's about right. So now, step 2 is to erase those guidelines. So here we go, I'm erasing all the guidelines. And you can see how easily the willow charcoal vanishes from the page. Now we're at the refining stage of the drawing, and in the refining stage, I'm going to go in and clean up the individual features of the portrait. This is the step that takes the longest. You have to erase a little bit of the mark, then carefully redraw it with a charcoal pencil, and you're not trying just to redraw the exact line that you erased. You're trying to refine according to the reference material. I'm also adding some more detail in this stage as well. So here in the eye, I'll add the pupil and the shape of the highlight. Then I can refine the iris and the bottom lid. One of the reasons why this step takes the longest is because it's the most finicky. This is the time where you really need to pay attention to every little nuance of the face. This is where it's going to be easiest to make changes, and so it makes a lot of sense to put all of your effort into photorealism at this stage. Even today, after years of experience, it might take me between 5 and 12 attempts to get someone's features absolutely right. If the features don't look right at this stage, they're never going to look right. You're not going to be able to shade them into correctness. So take an hour or two until you are 100% satisfied that you have the features correct, and then, and only then, we'll push onto the shading. Now we can move on to step 4, which is to start the shading. Now shading with charcoal is much easier than shading with graphite because you can just lay the pencil on the side and very quickly you lay in a base tone. So I'm going to do that in the hair. I'm working with the growth of the hair. Take your time when you get to the side of the face, and if you make a mistake, fix it right away. I'm going to do similar work to add shading in the face. So I'm just kind of quickly laying down some tone where I see shadows. Now, unlike shading in graphite, I don't really have to establish a base tone so much using the charcoal because it's going to blend so much more and more easily. So I'm going to be really careful about starting out too dark, and instead of starting with the base tone and then darkening up from there, I'm only going to put down shadow in the shadow shapes from the very beginning. As you shade a face, imagine yourself shading an orange. There's that line of reflected light around the outside of the sphere, and then you're going to have shadows on the opposite side of anything that's sticking out. So the cheeks kind of stick out. On the downside of the cheeks, there's going to be a shadow. The nose sticks out, but on the underside of the nose, it's going to be a shadow, and so on and so forth. And now, after putting down the tone, you blend it. Charcoal blends so easily that you can use many different tools to blend. So I like to use a tissue, or in this case, a paper towel wrapped around my finger, and I blend like this using little circle strokes for the large areas like the face, and then when I get to the smaller areas like the features of the face, I'm going to move to a stomp and add the tone there much more delicately. And there's no great trick to it, I'm just filling in that tone. In these areas that I'm working in now, you might need to go back and forth a few times. Add some tone and then blend it, and then, if needed, add tone a second time, or even a third or fourth time. I'm definitely going to need to do that in the eyes as well, because after blending, I lose a lot of that line. Here, I can just roll my stomp in this bit of loose dust that I got from sharpening my charcoal pencil, and add tone directly using the stomp as an applicator and a blender in one. Amazing, see? That works really well, especially for areas like the lips. And I can go back, add some details, pick out some highlights, and blend. After blending the first pass, then you just repeat that step, continue on with the second pass. So if you need to, just add more tone. For the smoothest, most realistic skin tone, make sure that you put down the charcoal in the same direction over the entire portrait. And where you're really going to want to punch it up is next to the face, in the ear, and especially in the hair. So to do that, choke up on your pencil, press a little harder, and you can see immediately that just by pressing harder, you're going to get a much darker tone. But then when I'm working on the face, I'm going to add just a lighter pass of tone. Here I'll add some darker shapes to the hair. And you can find those shapes easily by simply squinting at your reference material. So I'm going to do this work and finish up step 4 off camera. I'll come back when I've added some more of the darks and done just a little bit more of that blending. After blending and adding some more darks, this is what you might come up with. And you can just go from there, adding some more darks after the first pass of blending. So then after you've blended, refer to your reference material and decide whether or not you want some more darks. If you do and you have a lot to put in, you can just go back to willow charcoal or a chunk of charcoal and put them in more quickly than with a charcoal pencil. And then you're ready to move on to the final step, which is refining. So refining is going to be really similar to step 4, except you're working on a smaller scale. You're doing the little details. You're picking out the highlights with your kneaded eraser. You're going in and you're adding some final passes of darks. You're adding the really subtle shadow shapes. So in other words, your final step is just finishing the piece. So, protect the piece with a clean sheet of paper. I'll go into the eyes a final time and add those eyelashes, and the last few details like that. You're going into the lips and adding those little cracks in the skin, and then picking out highlights with your kneaded eraser. I'm going to thicken the eyebrows in this step and use wispy single strokes to develop some individual hairs just here and there. Do the same thing on this eye. Add some dark hairs in the hairline. And I might emphasize the lid line here. So step 5 is just doing whatever you need to do to finish it up and push it as far as you can or want to with the realism. So this step is going to take as long as you want it to. It could take minutes, or it could take hours, or even days. But you know you're at this step when all of the features are in place, they look correct, and you're just focusing on this minute details. I'm going to go with my finger, shade through the hair, and then use my kneaded eraser to pull out a few blonde strokes. Just like this. So I'm going to go off camera one last time, and the other thing I'm going to work on while I'm off camera is a few details in the clothes. She's wearing a bright polka dot dress, so I've already drawn the polka dots. I'm just going to fill them in with some tone, just like this, and then blend them with a stomp, just like this. So I'll take care of a few little things like that off camera, things that you don't need to see, and when I come back, I'll show you the very finished product. At the end of step 5, this is your finished portrait. So that is how you draw a portrait in 5 easy steps using charcoal. Step 1, lay out the large shapes and give yourself guidelines. Step 2, sketch in those features and erase your sketch lines. Step 3, tighten up your features. Step 4, add shading and blending. And step 5, refine as needed. It's really not that difficult a process. It just takes practice and learning how to put down the tone in different ways and paying close attention to the details. So I'm going to upload this photograph so that you can practice on the very same reference material that I used for this tutorial. And if you don't get it right the first time, I would strongly encourage you to try it multiple times. Or if you get tired of drawing the same face, you can always apply the same process to a photograph of your choice. So that's all for this month, and I thank you so much for watching.